Hello, I am so glad you're here. Welcome to my studio. If you're new, welcome, and if you're returning, welcome back. You are an artist. So today we're going to be doing some watercolor, very beginner. I've got some watercolor paints. These are the Prang watercolor paints, and so they're a student grade paint, but whatever watercolors you have, that's fine. I have this paint and marker pad that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I just cut a sheet of that in half to use what we're going to use for practice. But this is a good paper, absorbent enough that you can practice watercolor. Um, I don't have a problem with this paper. Then the second that I have is my Strathmore. It's a Series 400 watercolor paper. Now, do I think this is the best watercolor paper money can buy? I don't. But I use it. I use it quite frequently. I continue to buy it. It's not expensive. And when I buy it, I often find a buy one, get one free type of a deal. Price it out, shop around. But I think this is a great start if you're, considering watercolor. And what I did was I cut one of these sheets. They're a 9 by 12, and I just cut one in half. But you could even cut it into fourths. But I just wanted to cut it in half because I wanted you to be able to see. But if you do it this size, you could even use this as a card front or a postcard. So it's kind of the size of a index card. So that could work for you. So it's the Strathmore Series 400 watercolor. It's a cellulose based compared to cotton, but it works fine. I'm going to get started with the Prang. It's the Dollar Tree paper. Okay, I have a brush and I picked a number 5 because that's about the size that comes with the kit. Now I think that the brush that comes with this, I think this is it. I'm not positive, but I think so. And it's a number 8. But again, whatever brush you have, use that. It'll be fine. I've got my 2 water containers, one for getting the bulk and then one to rinse again. So I think having 2 water containers is really helpful. I have this is just a hair care product mister, and I'm just going to activate my watercolors. Some watercolors you don't have to activate, but I never was disappointed when I activated my paints with a little water. If you don't have a mister, you can just get your brush wet and then just dot and get it wet, dot, get it wet, and just do the whole thing that way. And that's a fine way to get it activated. We're going to be using just a couple of different brush strokes, and we're going to be making a wreath. So I'm just going to grab a pencil and reaching. I'm just going to draw a circle because that's how we're going to get started. And it's obviously not a perfect circle, but we're going to be drawing that on our paper, and then you'll just have a little guideline for making a wreath. So the brush strokes we're going to use, and I'm just going to pick a color and put it on here. Now you're going to be working dry with wet, and you're just going to be making 3 dots, 1, 2, 3, and they're wet. Now I'm rinsing and I'm just dabbing my brush off on the paper towel, and then I'm just going to draw 3 like petals, and it's going to be faint and it's going to be light, but that's what we want, just like that. So we're going to be using brush strokes like that, and you can just go ahead and take your paint and you can just practice. Make some of those dots, rinse it out, blot it, and then just go ahead and create some petals and just practice. That's what this paper's for. If you don't have a paper that's designed to use with water and water type products, just use printer paper, but just you're just practicing. We're not worrying about what exactly this looks like. We're just trying to practice. And this is going to be our main brush stroke or our main technique for creating our wreath. Okay? So I'm just going to set this aside, but practicing never hurts. Okay, this is what's called a cold press paper, and this is that Strathmore Series 400 watercolor paper, and you'll notice that it's bumpy, and think of that as like cold and you get goosebumps. Cold press paper has bumps, and I'm just looking at both sides to pick the side that has the most bumps, and that's this side. So this is the side I'm going to be working on, and I'm going to grab that pencil and I'm just going to make a small circle, nothing precision, just to give me a guideline, just to help me anchor these flowers down that we're going to make this flower wreath with. So I'm grabbing that same brush, grabbing some of this paint, and I like to put it on the mixing area because I can see the color and I can just add a little more water to the pigment, because when we put our dots, we want them to be drops. We don't want them to just sink straight in. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put 3 dots. 1, 2, 3. Rinse, blot off, and make sure you don't have drips on this ferrule, this metal part, because they will eventually run down and all of a sudden you'll have a woof of water. So you want to try to avoid having water on the ferrule. And now I'm going to just bring out these petal shapes, and they're very faint, but that's okay. They're going to just look very delicate. And I do want my drops separate. I don't want them to be touching in the middle. If they do, it's not, don't worry about it. But if you can avoid it, just for this design, I think it's helpful. I'm going to do the same thing, and we're going to be repeating this process over and over and over again. But, that's the way it goes. And I'm just going to keep making these petals. So how are you today? What is your day like? Are you crafting? What are you crafting? Are you working in your art journal? I would love to see what you're doing in your art journal. I wish I could see you. I wish I could hear your voices, but it feels like you're here with me. I hope it feels like I'm there with you. Sometimes when I'm watching videos, I I've got it going in the background, and maybe I'm doing some housework, just the things that we all do. And I'll just be listening. And then if I think, okay, I really want to give that a try, then I rewatch it when I'm sitting and working the tutorial. And then what I do is I can, stop it and start it so that I can stay caught up with the artist. You're an artist too. Don't ever forget that. There's my 3 drops. It's April now here in Michigan, and we had snow the last couple days. Not enough that it was going to stick, but it hung out on the cars, and but it melted before the day was over. Just grabbing a little more pigment and keep making my 3 dots. These are kind of big. That's all right. Flowers are all shapes. They're all sizes. I can see I've got water on the ferrule, so I'm just dabbing that off. It's such a surprise when that comes dripping down. You'll go, oh. There's always a way to get around it, though. Don't worry if it happens. If it happens to me, I'll show you what I do, because, oh yes, it happens to me. Keeping this a little loose. And let's do some more. And those are wet. Water. Still have water on the ferrule. We may have that demonstration sooner than later, but it's okay. Now, once I spread out the pigment, this is not that wet that it would drip. You can see it's not dripping. It's just wet. But when I'm putting these drops on, if I would do that tipping, it may. Maybe would, maybe it wouldn't, but it very well may. So just bring, water on the ferrule. Bring this out. Now this one's pretty wet, but it'll sink in. It's fine. And there. Okay, so we've got 6 of them, and that's a good start. I'm going to add a few more, but it's getting nice and full, which is what we like. I'm going to add one right here. And if the leaves start or the petals start to overlap a bit, it's okay. If they don't, it's okay. No rules. I want you to relax. I want you to enjoy the process. And it doesn't matter how it turns out. We're just learning. We're just practicing. And trust me, I'm still learning too. I most certainly am. I am no watercolor specialist. I have not arrived. And when I see some of the watercolors and I think, wow, someday I want to be able to do that. And it's true, I do. Okay, I have a space here, and I'm going to put my 3 dots, but I'm going to kind of keep it in my mind that this flower is only going to be partly showing. So I'm just going to add these 3. And you may see that these guys kind of joined up. That's all right. It's all right. There. Okay. And do we have a space like that? We kind of do right here. I'm going to keep them just a little bit smaller of dots if I can, you know. Well, sometimes our best plans don't always work out, but again, no right or wrong. And this is a judgment-free zone. No one's judging you, and it's not a race. Go as fast or as slow as you're comfortable with. Okay, I think that's looking good. So now I'm just going to feel, yeah, they're dry enough. I'm going to start with the next row of petals. So I'm just repeating the process, but I'm going to start on this one, and I'm going to give it 3 more dots. Same color and just the same technique, but if they overlap, it's totally fine. I'm just bringing these guys out. And if my brush seems to be getting a little dry, I'm just going to dip it back in the water and work on it again. And there. And I'm going to repeat that process. Now, as this paint dries, I can always reactivate it. So it's totally fine. And we've got that other flower here that's kind of tucked in. I know when I concentrate, I get a little quiet. I'm sorry. I'm going to leave this flower alone for now because it's pretty new. I've got a drop there. Okay. But I'm going to work on this one. And again, I'm going to wet my brush, blot it off, and add my petals. Are you seeing flowers? Are you kind of seeing what we're building here? Hope so. Hope it looks like flowers. I need a little more pigment. Yeah. Seems a little dry. And sometimes I have to go back and forth, too wet, too dry, too wet, too dry. And that's just something that you will eventually get a feel for. It's not something I can teach you. You're just going to get a bit of a feel. And that's why you practice. And then once you practice on one type of paper, it's going to be a little bit of a new experience on the other paper. But it's all good because you're gaining muscle memory. Your body does learn the way that you create these strokes and the way that you create these brush marks. And so it all is beneficial. And here we go. And I am purposely working a little bit slower because I want you to be able to see and to grasp what it is I'm attempting to accomplish here. Now these paints, if you don't have any watercolor paints, I think they're a great way to start. I really do. And I bought this set off of Amazon only because the sets that were in my local stores, they were more expensive than I knew I needed to spend, but they were also only 8 colors, and I wanted the 16. So that's why I went to Amazon. But I have found them at places like Office Depot, Walmart. You used to be able to find them in grocery stores and in drugstores, Walgreens, CVS. I haven't seen them lately there. I have seen them at the Dollar Tree, but there was obviously a manufacturing issue because you had duplicates of some colors and missing some others. So be careful, when you're buying them. But, we're only going to be using a couple of colors. So even if you got one of those sets, it's not a complete waste, not at all. This is a little dry. I don't even know if you can see this. I hope so. And there we go. And there. Okay, I think that's looking really pretty. Now remember, I had a couple of them that I said we weren't going to completely finish like in a whole circle. So one is here, but I'm just going to add 2 drops to that one. And I'm going to find the other one. Where did I put that other one? Right? I think it's in here. So I'm just going to add a couple petals to it, but it won't be the 6 petals. I'm just going to add, I think it's right here. And I'm just going to add 2 petals to that one. This one just may get lost in the grouping, and that's really okay. All right, so we can see our beautiful little wreath. Okay, now I'm going to add some leaves. Now, I'll get that practice sheet and set this aside for a second. So for the leaves, it's not a whole lot different. I'm going to grab this kind of a Kelly green, and I'm just reactivating. I had some right here. That's why I don't always clean this off. It's not that I'm so lazy. It's that it can be used again. So a couple ways we can make these leaves. But the way that, one way I'm going to do it is I'm going to just, and I want to do it so you can see, press my brush down and then lift and twist. Press my brush down, twist and lift. Press my brush down and give it a lift. But you can do it the same way we have and just make a dot, rinse your brush out, and you can just bring out kind of a leaf shape like that. Either way is fine, totally fine. And again, these are fantasy flowers. So what do the leaves look like for this particular species? Anything. We're just adding some color. So I'm just gonna press my brush and then lift and twist and just kind of bring it out into a bit of a leaf shape. And maybe right in here, press and give it a little twist. And I'm turning this and press and just give it a lift and press and give it a lift. There. And grab some more. There should be some leaves on the inside. Press and give it a lift. Press, give it a lift. And let's get just a couple more. So far, we've only got 2 colors going. Now, I'm just going to kind of look at the composition. I'm going to put one right here. And I'm going to do it that way that we were doing the petals. And I'm just going to draw it out in a little different shape. Kind of more of a point. And that's another way you can just create some little leaves. I'll do another one like that. Maybe one here. Put a dot, rinse and dry. And then, can you see? Draw it out. Kind of a faint leaf, but that's fine. Okay, a couple more leaves, not too many more. Press and then lift with a twist. Get a little more water, a little more pigment. And I've got some water on the ferrule and just see if it'll drop right in. And let's see. Maybe I'll put one here. Press, lift and twist. And one more on the inside. Maybe here. Press, lift and twist. Just kind of bring it out to a point. Okay, so there we've got a few leaves. Now, centers. I'm going to go with yellow, kind of the traditional center of a flower color. Again, I'm just reactivating some yellow that I had here. And I'll grab that practice sheet again. And this time, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so you can see, but I'm just going to make like a this way and a this way. Kind of like 2 C's, a frontwards and a backwards. And, you know, there's going to be probably some white in the middle, and just leave that. That's fine. But if it doesn't, if you end up with just a solid circle, you know, that's fine too. But if you get some white in the petals, if you get some spaces in the centers where the pigment didn't completely fill it, leave the white spaces. They just, you know, add a little sparkle. So I'm just going to do it like I showed you, a couple of circles. And watercolor are transparent, so we may need to go over these a second time, and that's totally fine, and it's honestly expected because we're seeing right through them. There. Now I've got those 2 half flowers, and I'm going to put the center there. And these are flowers. This one you can hardly see, but I'm just going to put it right there. Those are flowers that aren't exactly facing right at us. Okay. Now, I'm going to take that color that we made our flowers, and I'm just going to grab a little, and I'm going to put it on here, but I am going to work I'm getting a little water. I'm just going to work a little bit drier. Now, I don't want it like glue. I don't want it completely heavy. And the longer your brush is in this direction, the more the water is going to be seeping down. So you kind of have to be aware of that. But I'm going to use the most tip that I can, not on every petal, but just in a couple of the petals on the flowers. I'm just going to add some little lines like the petals are folding a little bit. As I say, I'm not going to do all of them, but just some on each flower. And I don't have something specific in mind where I'm saying I'm only doing the left or I'm only doing the right. No, I'm just doing, honestly, where my hand takes me. Just adding a few little marks. Some are thicker, some are thinner, and it's all fine. Sometimes I'm doing 2, sometimes I'm doing 3. I don't have a handwritten plan. And a little bit there. There. Okay, this guy. And there. Isn't that pretty? Wouldn't you like to see that on a card that came to your house? Wouldn't that be nice? Sure it would. Okay, I'm going to just add a little oomph to those leaves. So I'm going to grab kind of this, I think this is kind of a tealy blue. Let's see. Yeah. And if it mixes in my green a little bit, I'm going to mix it in my green a little bit. But I just want a little different of a shade than what I already have. I think that looks nice. Now, I'm not going to work too wet, not too dry, and it's just one of those things that, again, you'll kind of get the feel for it. I'm knocking off a little water out of my brush. And then I'm just going to go on one side of the leaf and just give it a little accent. I'm going to add a little more blue, and I'm just going to add a little line on these leaves just to give them a little oomph. No right, no wrong, just adding some dimension. And is it perfect? No, we're not going for perfection. We're just having fun. I hope you're having fun. But I already like the way these leaves look with that little bit of blue. There. I just gave them a little bit of definition. Cleaning out my brush using both sides of the water. Now I'm going to go back to that yellow. I don't want it too wet. And I've got a lot of water on this brush. So I'm just going to blot it off. And I'm going to go back into those centers and add another one. I'm going to add a little more. There we go. And just add a second layer of this pigment to my centers. And again, I'm just giving them a little oomph. And I'm not scrubbing, so I'm not lifting up the paint underneath. I'm not, scouring the paper. I'm just adding another layer on top so that my centers are just a little more robust. Okay, I like that. Now, I'm just going to add one more color, and I'm going to go into the brown, and I'm going to add this, add a little water. I'm going to add this to this yellow. So I'm just darkening it a little. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to go ahead into my little wet centers, and I'm just going to give it a couple of dots in each one. You can do 3, you can do 2, and they're going to kind of bleed and merge, and that's okay. It's what we're expecting. This is one of those situations that after it's completely dry, you're going to see a little bit of a difference because they are going to merge inside the yellow. And there's just a little bit more definition to the center. Okay. Isn't that pretty? I think it's delicate. I think it's cheerful. So I'm going to take that piece of paper that we were practicing on, and I'm just going to tear out a circle about the size of my wreath. And the edges are obviously not going to be perfect, and I want that. And that's why I'm not using scissors. But if you're not confident to tear a circle, then just go ahead and use some scissors, whatever works for you. And there. So obviously it's not perfect. And I'm just looking, is there anything real shiny? No. So yes, it's wet. If I just smeared my hand over it, it would smear. But I'm just going to lightly drop this on top. Boof. There. I'm going to adjust it just a little. Okay. Now, same brush. And I want to use the colors I've already used. But with the red, we're going to do some splatters. With the red, you have to be careful with splatters. Don't go too crazy with them because it just doesn't always go well. I will say it. It can look like blood splatters. So we don't want that. Okay. So just adding, and what I'm going to do is take another brush, just any old brush or a stick or a pencil or whatever you got. And I'm just going to hit like this. And that's all the red I'm going to put. Rinsing, double rinse. Now I'm going to go right into the yellow pigment because I've got brown in that other one. And I'm going to do the same. But with yellow, I'm going to be just a little more generous. Now I'm going to grab that green. I'm just going right into the pigment. Same thing. And then I'm going to grab that blue. That was this one that we used. And do the same. And there. Okay. Now, let's have the great reveal. And I'm going to try to lift it up without dragging it. There. What do you think? I think it's gorgeous. I really, really do. Now, those dots are a bit wet, but you can do this, right? I know you can. So I'm going to grab my Sharpie, try to find a bit of a dry space, and I always, always sign your work. And there. If you found this helpful, if you found this inspirational, if you enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up, like and subscribe. You can go ahead and ring the bell, and then you'll be notified every time I put a new video out. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in another video.